The CNBC app. Global market news in one place. Customizable sections and personalized alerts. Stocks tracking, interactive charts and market insights all in your hands. Stay connected. Stay informed. Download the CNBC app today.
A very warm welcome to Squawk Box Europe. I'm Steve Sedgwick with Juliana Tautelbaum. We are slumming it in the London studio, and Karen Cho is at a very shishi event at a very shishi hotel. It's actually the Bank of America Financial CEO Conference as well, and these are your headlines. Google joins the crowd of U.S. companies unveiling UK investments as the country rolls out the red carpet for President Trump's state visit.
Trump prepares to speak with China's President Xi Jinping Friday after trade talks appear to yield a deal on TikTok.
The framework is for it to switch to U.S.-controlled ownership. But again, I'm not going to get ahead of the leaders' call on Friday. We have a framework. They'll have to confirm the deal.
And traders count down to a cut from the Fed as its monetary policy meeting begins. As Trump pick Stephen Mirren is confirmed by the Senate, and an appeals court rejects the president's bid to fire Lisa Cook.
Right, very good morning to all of you. Good morning, Juliana, and we'll come to Karen in a few moments' time. Look, state visits are pomp and ceremony and carriage rides and perhaps a bit of golf for the president in between and just a hell of a lot of ceremony as well. Foreign dignitaries seem to like it. They love all the royal angle as well. But actually, I'm going to go against type and say I think some really meaningful stuff is being attached to this. Now, maybe things that were happening anyway were coalescing around this, but I'm seeing investment after investment being announced as well. Now, whilst the soft power of the UK royal family is overestimated, underestimated, we can talk about Meghan and Harry who were blue in the teeth and what impact that's had on transatlantic relations. I'm not going to go there now, but there are deals after deals being talked about as well. In my inbox now, Google selecting Shell as its renewable energy partner. Google announcing a $5 billion AI investment as well. BlackRock to invest $500 million in UK data centers as well. And there's loads of other little bits and pieces as well. So it may be that it's all just coalescing around this visit, but a feel-good relationship for the US president is not a bad thing potentially for British business.
Ruth Porat, the chief investment officer, president of Google, in fact, called it a US-UK special technology relationship. So a nod, of course, to the special relationship that the two countries have had for years and years and years. And these numbers are pretty big, the deals that you just talked about here. And the ripple effects are significant. When you talk about building a data center, who's going to provide the power for that data center? It obviously filters through to the power generators in the United Kingdom. So it's not just the tech companies that could stand to benefit here. I would say that we're putting a lot of focus so far on the deals, the positives here, but think back to 2019, President Trump's state visit then. It was not without controversy. You might remember.
When he put his hand on the back of the Queen?
His hand on the back of the Queen.
Which you just don't do. That's off to the Tower, beheading territory, you know. No wonder we got rid of America.
Putting his hand on the back of the Queen. Putting his hand on the back of the Queen. Also saying that the NHS should be part of trade talks back then. That ruffled a few feathers.
Well, it's recently ruffled a lot of feathers anyway. And one of the reasons why Merck, the US Merck, not the European one, has actually said it's getting rid of some scientists in King's Cross. So yes, even this week is being controversial. But Karen, you are at an amazing conference speaking to a lot of CEOs as well. I'd imagine a lot of them have got a view on this as well.
Well, no doubt, and it's very early days, so I'm the first one here, Steve, bit of an early mover. But the reality is we're still against that backdrop where there's a lot of uncertainty globally as we see the wash up from those trade tariffs and, of course, the geopolitics. Still a lot of conflicts happening globally, and as we count down to the Fed, the interest rate stories. So it is a backdrop, and I think as we talk about the UK, we gear up for a Bank of England decision this week too. The market is looking for what these deals mean for the UK, because I've got to say it has been very downbeat here, very, very down power in terms of the outlook and the fiscal challenges. So anything that can bring some form of a growth story, surely a good thing for the UK. I mean, all the deals you're spelling out at this stage, I've got to say I was somewhat pessimistic when I heard just AI deals, because typically that means that the UK just takes more services from the likes of Microsoft and Google. But this Google announcement this morning suggests that there's going to be jobs coming to the UK, and clearly jobs and any bounce for business is certainly good news. 8,250 jobs annually at British business from this Google announcement. That is certainly welcome news, but it wasn't meant to be just technology, also nuclear and also financial services in terms of some of the deals. So I think you probably all agree that the problems that Rachel Reeves faces today makes it very hard to create a growth story in the UK. So if American business can do that for the UK, then we take it, don't we?
Yeah, I hear your point. We'll come back to this in a moment. A couple more points to say, but just to fill in the gaps for our viewers, President Trump will arrive in the UK for a 3-day state visit. The two countries looking to strengthen relations and deliver a series of announcements focused on their financial ties. The US Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, will hold talks with Chancellor Rachel Reeves ahead of President Trump's arrivals. Well, as we mentioned, deals have been leading the agenda ahead of Trump's visit, with a slew of US firms making and eyeing UK investments. BlackRock has announced a £500 million investment into UK data centres. Alphabet also unveiling $5 billion investment in British AI. Also confirmed is a deal on the development of nuclear power set to be signed during Trump's visit. And just on that note, we've got a brilliant US nuclear energy CEO coming on the show at 8:30 London time, and we're going to talk a lot about the ramifications there, so don't miss that. A person familiar with the matter also confirmed to CNBC that OpenAI and NVIDIA are in talks about a major deal to support UK data centre development. And private equity group Blackstone is set to pledge $100 billion of investments. That's a lot of money in the UK over the next decade. Well, earlier today we heard from the ambassador, the US ambassador to the EU, former ambassador at that, Anthony Gardner, who outlined what he thinks the UK government will want from the talks this week.
This is a welcome trip that hopefully will shift the focus of attention in the press and in the public to say, look, Britain is a great place to invest. As you just said, there are going to be a lot of announcements apparently about investments, not only by financial firms, but otherwise in the UK. So all of that is good. And I think a second key objective here is to move ahead on the recent US-UK trade deal, which remains incompleted. It's a 5-page heads of terms. It's not yet a real deal. And there's still some important parts of that deal which remain to be filled in, including on steel and aluminum, to see if the UK can reduce those tariffs from 25% and to get an exemption for Scotch whisky, for example.
And that is the caveat, isn't it? The deal isn't signed. And let us all be brutally honest about it. I'm optimistic about the amount of Anglo-US business going on, but there is no full FTA. We're kidding ourselves if we think we have a full trade agreement, which takes years to negotiate.
I think that's one key here for sure. And when it comes to the deals that have been reported for this visit, that's also true. We're still waiting for detail for confirmation around the likes of the OpenAI, NVIDIA investments here. One other thing I would throw into the mix here, based on what Karen was saying, that, here in the UK, we're searching for growth. This is going to be welcome news to see the US investing and driving jobs growth here in the UK. But when you look at support for President Trump in the UK, it's incredibly low. Only 16% of Brits, according to a YouGov poll in July, had a positive view of him. So yes, economically, geopolitically, this might be the right move for Keir Starmer. But politically, coming at a time when the Labour government is under huge pressure, I'm not sure this is going to sit well with voters.
Brits don't vote for US presidents. Brits don't vote in midterms in next November. So I don't, to be honest, what do most Brits know about Trump's economic policies, with respect?
Do they necessarily want the UK to be moving closer to a government run by a leader that they don't support? I think that's something to consider here at a time when Keir Starmer is under so much political pressure. A country or a leader they don't support? Because I'm all over transatlantic relations. As I'm with EU, by the way. I think we can have both. But, I mean, the president's almost immaterial to the longer-term trading relationships with the United States. I think that's certainly the story that Keir Starmer would paint. And if you're an economist or a geopolitical watcher, you'd probably make the same argument.
Karen, jump in.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on the geopolitical angle, because I think that while we've had a very warm relationship so far between the two leaders of the UK and the US, the touch points here as we talk about the UK could be on geopolitics, namely the war in Ukraine, whether we've seen enough pushback from Trump here against Putin. And clearly lawmakers here in this country feel a certain way about getting progress and making sure there's the right security guarantees around Ukraine. And of course, Gaza is, of course, another issue where we still need to see some progress. The other point is around migration. There were big protests here in the UK over the weekend as well. Don't forget, Trump has taken a very strong line against migration in the United States, which has had consequences for the US labour market. So that could also cause some dispute on the ground here in the UK, given what has been, I guess, a steady move towards the right in some quarters of this country around migration, Steve.
Yeah, great points, Karen. All, I'm sure, which will be raised, and I wonder if the words Peter Mandelson will come up at all. Just saying. Given how close the President and Mr. Mandelson last time we saw them in the Oval Office were. We have a brilliant piece online. My good friend Holly Elliott has done a great piece about Trump's visit. And it comes, of course, at a time, as Juliana pointed out, when both the Prime Minister and, to a certain extent, the President, under a lot of pressure on increasing fronts as well. For more on why Trump's visit is likely to offer a welcome distraction for the Prime Minister, check out CNBC.com. Look at the headline. I think it's a great headline and it raises a lot of questions. The UK is about to embrace Trump. The truth is, it needs him right now.
The UK visit comes after talks between U.S. and Chinese officials in Madrid, with Besson saying the two sides have reached an agreement on TikTok that is expected to be confirmed by Presidents Trump and Xi ahead of tomorrow's deadline for parent company ByteDance to divest its U.S. holdings.
The framework is for it to switch to U.S.-controlled ownership. But again, I'm not going to get ahead of the leaders' call on Friday. We have a framework. They'll have to confirm the deal.
Our U.S. colleagues will speak to Besant at 12 London time today. Now, President Trump said on Truth Social that he will speak with President Xi on Friday to discuss the agreement in what will be the first direct discussion between the two leaders since June. Let's get out to our colleague Elaine, who joins us now with more from Hong Kong. Elaine, flesh out for us what we know about this framework deal around TikTok.
Hey, Juliana. So this framework deal is definitely a surprise breakthrough, given that the expectations were so low going into the talks. But sounds like they've found a happy medium, moving TikTok to U.S.-controlled ownership and also the licensing of IP rights. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that the commercial terms have been agreed upon, although they won't discuss it because it's between two private parties. But the deal could be confirmed over the call between Xi and Trump on Friday. And Jameson Greer, the U.S. Trade Representative, said that they were focused on making sure that the deal was fair to the Chinese side and also fully respects U.S. national security concerns. And China's International Trade Representative Li Chenggang said the outcomes of this trade talk was hard-won, but he still slammed the U.S. for, quote, generalizing national security concerns and expanding sanctions against Chinese entities. Now, Beijing officials have also said that they will review and approve technology exports. So one interesting detail from this deal is how this licensing of intellectual property rights, including TikTok's proprietary algorithm to keep users engaged, will look like. But the Friday call, analysts say, might also provide some clarity as to whether that meeting between Trump and Xi will take place later this year. And of course, much more work needs to be done by the teams, the trade negotiators, before that can happen, especially for President Xi Jinping, who will want the details to be hammered out before the leaders meet.
Elaine, thank you so much for breaking down the detail around that deal, what we know so far. Let's get you a check on U.S. markets now and how the Wall Street session closed up yesterday. We had gains for all three of the major indices. The gains led by the tech-heavy NASDAQ, which gained about 1%. This marked the sixth positive session in a row for the NASDAQ. 6 out of 11 sectors overall were negative over the course of the session, led to the downside by consumer staples, which pulled back about just over 1%. Consumer communication services was the best performer in the U.S., rising about 2.3%. In terms of the overnight trade in Asia, we've got mostly higher there as well. You've got the Kospi out in front, up more than 1%, and more modest gains elsewhere. As far as European futures go, here's the early indication, about 45 minutes away from the market open this morning, and a similar story. Modest gains indicated across the board here in Europe.
Coming up on the show, we take a look ahead to the week, including tomorrow's key Fed decision as President Trump's bid to remove Governor Lisa Cook is rejected by a U.S. appeals court. Plus, Trump calls for an end to quarterly reporting requirements as U.S. regulators say they're looking to ease burdens on companies. And our coverage continues from the Bank of America EMEA Financial CEO Conference here in London. I'll be speaking to BNP Paribas CFO Lars Machenal at 7:30 London time. That's coming your way shortly.
Right, I think we've got some inconclusive UK employment data which broke just a few moments ago. Claimant count up 17.4 thousand month on month. ONS says there were 8,000 fewer people in payroll employment when compared with July 2025, so moving in the wrong direction, I'm afraid. 4.7% ILO, which is the International Labour Organization rate as well. 4.7% unemployment rate in the 3 months through to July. What else can I give you? There were actually 232,000 more people in employment 3 months on 3 months in the month to July, which is slightly better than expected at 220 actually as well. But I think by and large these were in line with expectations. One number which I hated, which has come up quite a lot recently as well, is the economic inactivity number, which is just quite extraordinary. I'm looking for it again now. Here it is. The number of people between the age of 16 and 64 who are economically inactive is 21% in May to July. 1 in 5 people is economically inactive. And I know our next guest will have a view on that one as well. But he's also got a really important report out, which I have to say is fascinating. The use of artificial intelligence, along with rising national insurance costs, are to blame for a drought in the UK jobs market, according to recruitment firm Reed. It found 1 in 7 employers said increasing AI use meant they were cutting back on hiring, whilst 1 in 5 said the same about rises in national insurance contributions. James Reed, CBE, is the CEO of Reed. And James, you always have such fascinating comments on the UK employment market as well. So thank you very much indeed for joining Juliana and myself this morning. Really good to see you. Before we get to your report, what do you make of the UK employment situation in the round at the moment? And I did pull out that economic inactivity number. I don't know if you want to focus on that as well.
Yeah, well, there's one number that I always look for in these monthly reports, and it's the vacancy rate. As a recruiter, I'm interested in vacancies, and I think economists should be interested in vacancies because it gives an overall health indicator.
It's kind of like the JOLT survey in the States.
Yeah, and what's shocking about this report is we're 38 consecutive periods of declining vacancies in the UK.
Wow.
So that's more than 3 years of falling vacancies. Now, I've been in recruitment a long time, and I've never seen this, and it's really concerning because the direction of travel is relentlessly down. So there are just fewer and fewer jobs. And with our report, we've been looking at what might be the causes of this. And some of those causes are sort of within our control, policies, and some of them are not, AI. But it's interesting that this sort of has created a perfect storm, which is real downward pressure, downward draft on job vacancies. And it means that it's really difficult for young people now to get a job, and over 1 million young people out of work in the UK, struggling to get jobs, and it's really tough for them. So, this should be, these statistics, when you look at them, as you said, just sort of month on month, they don't say that much, but this vacancy number is relentlessly concerning.
So 38 months covers the last lot and the current lot. I'm being apolitical here. What are both governments of different stripes getting wrong?
Well, I think most recently, the increase in employers' national insurance was extremely poorly timed. That's being polite. Because it made a lot of employers look again at their labour costs at a time when they might be thinking about automating. So in our survey, as you mentioned, 15% are saying that they've cut hiring because of AI. 22% say they cut hiring because of national insurance. So, that combination has been pretty toxic. And we knew that immediately, in our business, employers were ringing us up the week after the budget and saying we don't want to hire those people
anymore. It felt
anymore.
like that from the city looking in. But James, let me just come back to that point as well. Because I could not move for a sycophantic CEO before that budget. I couldn't move for a UK CEO who wasn't rolling over themselves to say lovely things about the government and about Rachel Reeves. Afterwards, they have an embarrassed look in their eye when I ask them if they still support all of her policies. Honestly, across the board, you can tell they don't want to say anything bad because they obviously don't want to backlash and they don't want to make news on it. But equally so, they're very coy about the performance of the government as well. Is this government economically illiterate?
Well, I can see why you're asking the question, and I might be, I might be inclined to say yes at the moment, because the biggest problem I can see is this employment rights bill in prospect, and it went back to the House of Lords, ping pong, and the House of Lords here in the UK made some amendments which we in business, or us in recruitment, thought were largely sensible. Well, the Prime Minister just said that they were going to scratch out all those amendments and put it through as the Commons originally passed it. Personally, I think that's a mistake, and I think it will lead to higher unemployment and it will lead to higher prices, because the government's own evaluation of this bill says it costs $5 billion a year. Well, where are those costs going to be paid for? People's jobs and prices. So, you can't just keep piling costs in and expect, inflation to go down. So I think they need to really look again at some of these policies, because, it's people's jobs and livelihoods we're talking about.
The UK government would try to steer us toward their growth policies. And in the last few days, we've had announcements coming through around U.S. investment in the UK from OpenAI, from NVIDIA, from Alphabet now. And these are billions of dollars, billions of pounds worth of investments here that are, if you want to take the bright side, going to lead to more job creation. What's your reaction when you hear news of these kinds of tech investments coming through? To what extent is that actually going to translate to an improvement in job prospects here?
Well, obviously, I'm really pleased to hear about investments, and there was the shipbuilding investment as well, and the UK should be a destination, I think, for businesses to come invest, and government should try and make it as attractive as possible. I think that's all good news. What I don't know is whether these AI-related businesses create many jobs, and the evidence we've got is that so far they haven't. It's the opposite. When I go to business events, the people in AI are always pitching, well, we can save you a lot of money by, cutting your workforce costs. And that seems to be the sort of automation mantra that we're hearing. So if you care about jobs, the jobs are created by small businesses in the UK who hire an extra person here and there. That's the engine room of the economy, really. The local businesses. And they're under huge pressure of rising costs. Business rates, taxes, prices. And people are closing up shop, and that should be of great concern to us.
Coming back to the report that you've published, the 15% of employers cutting back on hiring due to AI, can you give us any granularity on what sectors are being most impacted? And on the flip side, what you're seeing in terms of AI-proof parts of the economy?
Yeah, so we're seeing this in accounting, for instance. We have an accountancy recruitment specialism, and a lot of entry-level accountancy jobs are basically disappearing, and particularly graduate-type jobs. So, we're seeing that happening really pretty fast. So, since 2022, the number of graduate jobs advertised on our website has fallen by 2/3. So, these are entry-level white-collar jobs. That's where it's happening. Where is it not happening? Hospitality jobs, social care jobs, but these are not typically jobs that people who've been to university and spent a lot of money want to apply for. So there's a real pressure and tension in the labour market.
You mentioned hospitality, and we've actually seen some interesting dynamics in the hospitality sector when it comes to wage growth, that the jobs market in the UK is weakening, but pay is still rising, in particular in the hospitality sector. What do you make of that dynamic? Obviously, it has some big implications for the Bank of England if we continue to see wage pressure coming through. At the same time, the jobs market is weakening overall.
Yeah, it's really difficult for the Bank of England. It's sort of stagnation with inflation. The hospitality sector is paying more to attract people. They need to pay more for people to go and do those jobs, because you can't work from home typically. You don't sit in front of a laptop in a nice warm room. So, they have to make their businesses more appealing to job seekers in a competitive environment. Where you mentioned, 9 million people are economically inactive. That's a shocking statistic. And if you think 1 in 5 are inactive, the other 4 in 5 have got to pay for them. So the pressure on the taxpayer is, the tax base is getting smaller, and more people are asking for financial support. That's really difficult. That's a really difficult conundrum.
James, I mean, I've always loved learning lots from you from our conversations over the years. I want to just, actually, I was going to take you down the road about degrees, but you've kind of answered that question as well. This weekend, we saw enormous rallies against migration in the United Kingdom as well. And I don't want to go into the politics of whether it was economically based or whether it was racism based or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of views out there. Let's park that over there. What I want to ask you is about what you see in terms of the demographic needs of this country over the medium term as well. Because all I hear is that actually we're an aging population and then there are fewer and fewer workers who are going to be able to support that aging demographic as well. People like me and you, James, an aging demographic, dare I say. We've been around a while.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, where do we stand on the need for legal migration, and I say legal migration, versus the concerns about what it means for the country?
Well, I think it needs to be really seriously reviewed because it's been called the Boris wave, but there's been a huge wave of migration since 2020. I mean, someone told me a statistic, I think you should get it fact-checked, Steve, but that more people arrived in the UK between 2020 and now than arrived between 1066 and 2020.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's a huge wave of new migrants. And, I mean, there is a case, I think, for having a sort of moratorium on immigration and letting the policymakers think about it carefully for the next election. So the different parties say this is how we'd approach it, because it doesn't feel, I think, that there's a sense that that's not under control. So I think that would be a place to start. But we see people who have come here doing all sorts of important jobs, and they absolutely should not be demonized, which I think is really something I'd like to stress. But when we have 9 million inactive, I mean, some of them should be stepping forward and being encouraged to step forward, and we have an infrastructure that can support that. So I think that needs to be rethought, because we have, as we've just said at the beginning of this discussion, fewer vacancies in the UK than we had in 2020 before the pandemic. Significantly fewer now, and we have more people. So there's not enough jobs for the people that we have.
Yeah.
So to bring in more and more people doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary conundrum as well, because there might be that argument, though, as well, like we see in the States, is Americans want more manufacturing at home, but they don't want to do the manufacturing jobs. And I wonder if there's an element of that as well. James, we'll have to discuss on another occasion. We have to let you go. I know you've got a book coming out in November.
Yes, I have. It's called Karma Capitalism.
And I'm going to try and grab you around that time as well.
Please
to talk
do.
about it as well.
Thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah.
It's a different way of being a capitalist.
Very good as well. Well, I've just finished one book, and Juliana's, thank God I have, because she's had enough about me recounting Ray Dalio's book as well. So I need something new. James, lovely to see you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us today. James Reed, CBE, the CEO of Reed.